professor, the Professor Adélio Mendes of the University of Porto is a full professor of the Chemical Engineering Department of the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto, and Natalia Magnani, that she is professor in environmental sociology in the Department of Sociology and Social Research at the University of Trento in Italy. So welcome to our webinar. So first of all, I want to leave the word to the president of Hipácia, the association, to introduce the association and give you a welcome to the new event. Thank you. Davide Accardi, please.
So, thank you, Andrea. Thank you for the kind introduction. So, as Andrea said, my name is Davide Accardi. I'm the president of Hipácia, which is the Association of Italian Researchers in Portugal and operates accordingly to three fundamental principles. Integration of Italian scientists in the Portuguese academic community, promotion of networking and collaborations, and reduction of the communicational gap between academic and not academic people. So within this context, and considering the growing attention from the environmental topic, we decided to organize this event that will discuss and help us to understand the technical and social opportunities and challenges that will come with a very much expected energy transition. Of course, clearly towards clean and renewable sources of energy. So therefore, I would like to personally thank Professor Adélio Mendes from the Department of Chemical Engineering at the University of Porto and Professor Natalia Magnani from the Department of Sociology and Social Research from the University of Trento. So a personal thank also to Professor Andrea Zille, Vice President of Hipácia, who kindly accepted to be the moderator of the event. Thanks also to all those people who are following us online. And for those of you who would like to know more about the association and its activities, you can learn more on our webpage, so www.hipácia.pt. So thank you very much, and thank you again to our speakers. I'm really looking forward to hearing your talks. Andrea, you are muted.
Thank you, Davide. Okay, I will briefly introduce the first speaker. Professor Adélio Mendes, as I said, is a full professor of the Chemical Engineering Department of the University of Porto, but is also coordinator of the Competence Center for Energy of the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. Recently, also, he have received an advanced research grant from ERC, the European Research Council, on dye-sensitized solar cell for building integrated, a fellow of about 2 million euro. His research interests are mainly in dye-sensitized solar cell and perovskite solar cell, photoelectrochemical and electrochemical for energy. Professor Mendes has a co-author and author more than 400 articles in peer-reviewed international journal, and hold more than 25 patents, and he has led and participated in several European projects. So thank you for having you, and please, Professor Mendes, you have the word.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and let me say that I want to congratulate you for this association. It's always good. Getting integrated in the country, it's absolutely critical for having a society that is more productive, more happy, because we learn with others. But like my grandfather used to say, be Roman in Roman. So it's absolutely needed to get integrated where you are. So thank you. But today I'm going to speak about energy and this revolution. I'm going to frame the problem, the challenge. The challenge is like that. The carbon dioxide is building up in our atmosphere. So you can see here it starts in 1960s, around 315 ppms, parts per million, and now we are, reaching above 400 ppm, so approaching to 420 ppms. It's really a crazy increase of carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. This is an animation by, let me see if I can put it to work. Oops, it's not willing to work. Okay, let's move on. There was an animation by NASA that teaches about the global warming. So winds of change. It's crazy the price of carbon dioxide that you emit from fossil fuels. It starts beginning of this year at around 34 euros per ton, and yesterday reached about 90 euros per ton. It's absolutely a crazy increase. You can see this fact in different ways. You can say that it's very bad news for established businesses. There will be companies probably will cease activity. They will bankrupt because of that. It's probably good news for people that defend the environment, because this will create the motivation for change. But surely this is a great opportunity for those of you that want to get engaged in this change, and we have to change. There is no other way, because if we do nothing, the nature will change dramatically. So we have to do something for changing less, for the nature to change less. So this is absolutely critical. Let's move on. This is the price of natural gas in Europe. Never mind what this price means, because this is US dollars per million of BTUs in November 2021. It increased about 20 times since last year in June, where it reached the minimum value. So something is changing, and changing very, very quickly. So today, if you do the calculations, you get 84 euros per megawatt hour. This is the price of natural gas energy. So let's move on. We should also say that, but frame it concerning other developments that are being happening. So here we have the photovoltaic cells, and we may also have the onshore wind mills that are able to produce electricity at the price that is the bottom of the price for fossil fuels energy. So this is the range where fossil fuel energy is, okay, between these two lines. And the energy, in this case, the electricity from photovoltaics, is really at the bottom of this limit. And when we consider the onshore wind, it's well below. These are, this plot is from a report of 2020 by IRENA. IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency. And you can see how crazy are the prices from the renewable side. You also can see for the hydro or the hydraulic energy or electricity is also below what is the energy from fossil fuels. This is before fossil fuels price increased tremendously, which happened this year. So this is 2020. That's why I said. But this is not affecting the prices, or mostly are not affecting, actually are affecting, but not much, the price for photovoltaics and onshore wind and or hydraulic electricity. So this is a report. It's important to say always the date of the reports, because which concerns technologies for energy field, they change every year at speed of light. We have here the price for transporting energy. This is very important, and this is a logarithm scale, so it's not a linear scale. And we can see that transporting hydrogen by pipeline is quite expensive, and transporting or transmitting, more correctly, electricity is as well very expensive. You may consider, price of around 30 euros per megawatt hour. It's terribly expensive. And what concerns the natural gas pipeline is 10 times less the price for transporting, and the liquid natural gas tanker, so for the ships, is also in the same range. For oil, it's 10 times lower. So there is about 2 orders of magnitude distance between transporting oil in a pipeline or in a tanker compared to transport or transmitting electricity or transmitting hydrogen. And this is for the same amount of energy. So I want to speak a little bit about hydrogen, an angel or a demon. Let me just picturing here very briefly. I'm expecting questions afterwards, because questions are always very interesting. So I designed here some scenarios. So I said, okay, let's assume that the electricity is 40 euros per megawatt hour at production, and the transporting or transmitting it, it's 30 euros, and carbon dioxide is 90 euros. You saw yesterday it was 89, so it's very close to this value. So here you have the simulation. And then I put another scenario for 2025. I saw the price of fossil hydrogen yesterday, and I checked at this website. It was almost 5 euros per kilogram, and if you consider the emissions of carbon dioxide, it's even more expensive. By electrolysis, this is the price. This is cheaper. Actually, today, people, including myself, at the beginning of this year, I was saying that the parity of prices will be reached between 25 and 30, 2025, 2030. Actually, it's now, and this is because the crazy increase of the prices for the fossil fuels. Well, you may say that the electricity is also being crazy, the price. But if you have photovoltaic fields that supply the electrolysis, this is the price. If you buy to the grid, you will get problems, because now the electricity at the producing sites are about 10 times more expensive than last year. And it's hard to understand why. And it's expected, surely, that the price of hydrogen goes down as we move from 21, 25, and 30. So this is the figures. So it's expected now, this year, cheaper, and it becomes even more cheaper. So I pick up a new here, which states that it is expected that the price of hydrogen by 2030 is in the range of, let's say, 1.2 euros per kilogram. This is far cheaper than we can get from fossil fuels. So when we are speaking about renewables, we are not only speaking about the environment. Probably we are speaking about costs, not for now, but in a short time from now, I'm quite confident we will develop technologies that are simultaneously more sustainable in terms of environment, but also more sustainable in terms of economics. It makes money when we respect the environment, and at long range, this is much better. This is a report of this year, September 20 of this year. So at my school, we also assume this challenge. So we are deeply involved in several projects, and I'm describing one of them that is a crazy development we are doing in this field of renewable energies. So the question is it possible in 5 years' time to reduce CO2 emissions by 55%? Actually, you know that this is the objective of the European Commission, is the Fit 55, which considers decreasing the emissions of carbon dioxide by 55% compared to 2003, I guess. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess it's 2003. So it's a tremendous decrease of carbon dioxide to be done so quickly. Obviously, there was a reduction of 20% of this value for 2020, but now it's in 10 years' time. The challenge is really very high, and it's not easy. So this is the challenge, and we want to do this very quickly. And the wish list, if I do have some, it will be a possible technology for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, because it's not enough not to emit, it's also needed to remove with profit. So can we do this in our wish list? Then we analyze what nature recommends on this respect. And nature, what it did was picking up the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, transformed in biomass, and then in natural gas, oil, and coal, but mostly on coal. So nature, what it did was transforming carbon dioxide in solid carbon, and making this carbon dioxide safe and protecting our planet from overheating. So the dream for hydrogen production is emitting no carbon dioxide, cheap, on-site and on-board production. So maybe in your car or bus, wherever. Remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere at competitive prices, develop and implement in a very quick period of time, and valorizing byproducts. And we are going to see that this is possible, is now being done. So we have this reaction, which we call it methane decomposition, and transforms methane in solid carbon and hydrogen. It's endothermic, it's not very endothermic, but it's an endothermic reaction. So when it happens, it absorbs heat. You can use natural gas, biomethane, even you can use, if you want, synthetic methane. But the European Commission calls this turquoise, which is a little bit strange because they are assigning colors to the different hydrogens depending on the hydrogen source. So If it is by electrolysis, so no carbon dioxide involved, they call it green. They call, gray, if it produced by the conventional process of steam reforming with the emission of fossil carbon dioxide. Blue is when you have the conventional process, but you capture this carbon dioxide, you do the sequestration of this carbon dioxide. So this process of methane composition when using natural gas is mentioned as turquoise. But the European Commission needs to assign a name for when this is done from using biomethane, so methane that is produced directly from biomass. Because in these cases, indirectly, we are removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we decide to call it bright hydrogen because we want to be different and to explain our differences. So this reaction is around already for some time, not much time. I should say a few years. But the first was this company in Australia, that they are running a process where they use small particles of iron ore at 900 degrees for producing hydrogen and carbon. And they valorize the two, as you can see here. That's the point. There are some articles in the literature, actually is one of the most research approach, where they have this molten metal reactor running at around 1000 degrees, and you bubble here methane and you produce carbon and hydrogen, and you have the catalysts here. And finally, the process by BASF that runs at 1400 degrees, where they have carbon particles that they go down, and as they go down, and they capture the solid carbon, and hydrogen evolves, and is at 1400 degrees C. And a smarter approach. So we submit recently a project, a proactive project, to 3.5 million euros, involving different countries: Portugal, Spain, Switzerland, Germany. We have a catalytic approach for producing hydrogen. So you can see here is the conversion. So this is the composition on hydrogen, and it's pretty stable even after 500 hours, but more. So at 550 degrees C, less than half of the temperature that the other processes are running, we can produce huge amount of hydrogen per gram of catalyst. So if you want to have a more easy way to assess this, is more than 10 kilowatts per liter. So if you have 10 liters, you have 100 kilowatts. 100 kilowatts is more than the power of a car, a good car running on batteries. So it's really an amazing amount of energy density that you can get. And what you can get inside is actually these flakes inside this reactor. So when you run a catalytic reaction like this one, the catalyst becomes encapsulated. Our trick is reversing the reaction direction. So doing the gasification of this carbon at the interface of the catalyst, and then these flakes, they drop out without impairing the catalyst. So now speaking in terms of numbers, because my time is arriving to the end. So these are the assumptions, and our assumptions that derived from the literature of yesterday. So yesterday is the price of natural gas, biogas, carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels, the coal price, electricity price, assuming, you know, the photovoltaic panels in Portugal, which has, you know, very nice solar irradiance, and assuming, which is also from the literature, that 9 kilos of carbon dioxide are emitted per kilo of hydrogen when we use conventional technology of steam reforming of methane. So then you can see the prices. So steam reforming is just, you know, including the raw materials. So this is the thermodynamic balance to the raw materials. So you have to include also the capex. 5.04 euros per kilogram of hydrogen. It includes the price for emitting carbon dioxide. Methane composition, if you sell the carbon at this price, and probably you can sell this carbon that is formed at higher price, this is the price of hydrogen you can get when you produce the methane composition of natural gas, cheaper. And if you produce methane composition, this is the price of hydrogen. If you assume two things, if you assume that you are going to sell the carbon at this price, and assuming that the carbon dioxide that you are removing from the atmosphere is being paid at this price. So you can make an agreement with you know, a company that is emitting fossil carbon dioxide, and you say, in exchange, I capture it if you pay me back. And so this is the price. And so you can see that if today this process was viable, the owner of the process will be a rich person. These are the calculations for the most curious people that wants to check everything. And so I finish acknowledging my team, my research team, and now I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Mendes, for the very interesting presentation. Actually, we have a couple of questions. One is a question related to the amount of hydrogen that can be produced in terms of green or related to green hydrogen. It is possible today produce this amount of hydrogen, knowing that most of the hydrogen now, it's 95% is produced by catalytic reforming of gas or petrol or something. So it's possible to substitute this large amount. Also taking account that if the cars will use hydrogens, we'll have a more demand for hydrogen, even more than today.
I'll respond this way. This is a consortium in Portugal, H2 driven, and that is going to put 2,000 million euros on this for producing green methanol from the electrolysis of water. You produce hydrogen, capturing carbon dioxide from biomass boilers, put two together and making green methanol. The methanol is going to be produced and will start in 2025, and the project will be developing up to 2028, 2029. And the objective is producing 1% of the amount that is worldwide produced of methanol. So it's good for replacing all the expenses in the country of, or the use of methanol in the country for the chemical industry. It's also good for exporting, mostly for ships, for running ships. And if you use this all methanol for internal combustion engines, will be good for all the cars in Portugal, So responding to the question directly, yes, it is possible and surely will be possible because it produces money.
Thank you very much. Another question is, knowing that in Germany have installed potential power for solar and wind combined more than double of the consumed energy in the country. Which is the limit of solar and wind power installation in a country? Because usually some country reach not more than 50% of the installed power. So it will be possible to having a country working just in solar or depending just energetically or only by renewable energy source energy, or perhaps the nuclear option will be on the table.
We want to have what we call dispatchable electricity. It means that we want electricity that is available when we need it. And if we pick up on the photovoltaic electricity, it's only available during the daytime, not nighttime, because this is impossible. So if you only depend on the photovoltaic electricity, then you have to store. Store is normally the last option because it's expensive for different reasons. And so what it should be done is the mix of energies or energy sources actually. And so if you mix, for instance, solar with hydraulic, normally if the weather is dry, you have less hydraulic. And if the weather is wet, you have more hydraulic electricity. So they combine very nicely. If you use wind power, it also is very variable. It changes very quickly during the day. But if you look over a 1 month, it's quite stable from year to year. And if you combine these 3 forms of energy, then you need less storage. And nuclear, let me tell you, I'm not an expert on nuclear energy, but my perception, my view about nuclear was like that. After the Second World War, all the countries ran, or developed countries, they ran to have this technology because it promises, a great future. And many nuclear reactors were developed and built. And because the process was not well developed, because it produces wastes that spend thousands of years to decay, nobody was willing to touch these reactors and to upgrade them. But meanwhile, the technology evolved dramatically. And so we still assessing the nuclear energy with the view of, primitive nuclear reactors. In my opinion, the society must demand not to stop nuclear energy, but to use nuclear energy in a much wiser way. I used to say that we have 3 options. Or start to live as the primitive people and decrease the population by 100 times and everything will be okay. Or we still going as we are going, and very soon the weather will change so dramatically that this is equivalent to 1 million or 1 billion of atomic bombs. And we have to choose between the things. Or we follow an equilibrium and we say, no, we want safety, but not at all price. We want to equilibrate between, something that is absolutely dramatic for the future of the Earth and something that we can manage. We always should demand more, and we have to equilibrate the balance. Otherwise, things will go wrong. So, not being an expert on nuclear energy, I should say that the arguments of the politicians do not convince me. The arguments from some commenters that comes to the public, they are not logic for me, and nobody's giving, in my opinion, good answers to this question of the nuclear energy. In my opinion, I have no arguments against if the technology is a new technology, safer, if the wastes are also safe.
Thank you very much. I just add an information. Recently, the International Atomic Energy Agency have declared in a study that it will be enough each country having 10% of atomic energy in conjugation with renewables to having a sustainable model. So
I believe on that.
Yes, I think it's too low, but this is what they say. Thank you very much again, Professor Mendes. And we'll continue now to the second of our speakers, is Natalia Magnani. Natalia Magnani holds a PhD in sociology from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She is a senior assistant professor in environmental sociology in the Department of Sociology and Social Research at the University of Trento in Italy. Her research interests include the energy transition, environmental conflicts, and sustainable development. One of these issues, he has published several articles in international journals, such as the Journal of Rural Study, Energy Policy, and Energy Research and Social Science, as well as two monographs and several chapters in national and international volumes. Thank you very, very much to stay here today, Natalia Magnani. Please, you have the word.
Thank you for being for inviting me, and good evening to everybody. I share my presentation. Okay. So this evening I will talk about the social dimension of the energy transition as it has been analyzed and problematized by sociology. I said to say that sociology begins to take an interest in the energy transition, starting from the issue of acceptability of technology for the production of renewable energy. Social acceptability has to do with the role of the public as protagonist of conflict over the location of plants for renewable sources. Is this a first form of reflexivity that the public express in relation to the energy transition? We start talking about social acceptability in the 80s when several surveys concerning the wind sector were published in the United States and then in Northern European countries. However, this issue remained highly marginal up until the beginning of the 2000s, when there were generous incentives in European countries which challenge public support for renewable technology. The research on conflict is very interesting because it showed that although renewable energy is often perceived as sustainable from a social and environmental point of view, this does not happen in an automatic way, but there's the need for a reflection on specific social relationship, procedure, and practices that are involved in the energy transition. The majority of the studies of conflict over renewables share a critical approach to the NIMBY syndrome explanation. NIMBY stands for not in my backyard. is an acronym that emerged between the 70s and the 80s in relation to the opposition to nuclear plants, actually, in the United States and then also in Europe. A variety of visions of the public are associated with the term NIMBY, such as selfishness, particularistic and localistic interest, irrationality, superficiality, and ignorance of the consequences of the initiatives. These attitudes are usually also related to a series of possible negative consequences, such as the negation of the common good and the benefit for the community, the limitation of opportunity for economic development, a growing mistrust toward the main institutional and economic actors. However, various studies, both quantitative and qualitative studies, through empirical research, have highlighted that this accusation that we can summarize with the term NIMBY syndrome are often groundless. And the literature talk about the myth of the NIMBY syndrome. In particular, empirical research has shown that, for example, regarding the accusation of selfishness, the opposition committee often do not oppose so much the location of the plant as the mode of intervention or the type of solution proposed, or often the size of the plant is the object of opposition. So there is a shift from NIMBY to NIABY, from not in my backyard to not in anybody's backyard. Furthermore, in many cases, the action of the committee moves beyond the limit of the close localization battle, forming alliances with other local committees and with supra-local association. This happened in many cases. For example, in Italy, in the Alpine area, we witness a lot of opposition to mini hydroelectric plants. This committee have created a supra-local association, a national association. Then, as regards the issue of ignorance and superficiality, here the issue of the integration between expert knowledge and the lay knowledge that is linked to the knowledge of the territory and of the modification, transformation of the territory is particularly important. Finally, local opposition movements are not necessarily producer of trust, but research has shown that instead, sometimes this opposition movement have the effect of strengthening social bonds of proximity and also some form of so-called social capital. The analysis of conflict, in conclusion, highlight that there are a variety of social and cultural factors that are relevant, more relevant than talking about selfishness. And these social and cultural factors concern the interaction with political and social institutions. This social and cultural factor condition the possibility for the transition to further progress and need to be seriously taken into consideration. One key factor is the environmental justice issue. The research on local conflicts concerning renewable energy underlines how the feeling of justice and fairness rather than selfishness are among the key determining factors. Environmental justice is usually conceived as made of two different kinds of concern, distributive justice and procedural justice. Distributive justice refers to the way in which costs and benefits, economic as well as environmental, associated with a given infrastructure are spatially and socially distributed. Empirical research highlights that the main causes of conflict around renewable energy are the perceived reduced benefit for the general local community with respect to the high social and environmental cost, and the predominance of interest and profit for a small elite. But distributive justice concerns also the distribution of costs and benefits, not only between social groups, but also between territories, for example, urban and rural areas. Here, research shows that the demographic and social vulnerability of rural areas exposes them more easily to the risk of colonization by external powers who see a chance of profit in the green economy rather than an opportunity for local development. Distributive justice, procedural justice is the other corner of, block of concerning justice. Procedural justice concerns the adoption in the planning process of a participatory decision-making process. Here, research has shown that the effort of developers of renewable energy facilities to involve the local population in planning is often of poor quality. In many cases, in some cases, energy infrastructure are built without any information being provided to the community concerned. But often the type of involvement of the public is limited to information meetings. Information is based on the so-called model of deficit. The idea is that if people had better knowledge, they would support a certain technology. However, this is not true. The literature has shown how there's no direct correlation between information and behavior. In addition, very often people who oppose the plans are very well informed on a certain technology. An alternative to offering information is consultation. That means to create a dialogue between the promoters of the facility and the local population. Consultation requires recognizing and giving value to local expertise and to those forms of tacit knowledge, very much linked to knowledge of the territory that different social groups can offer. However, the research on renewable energy has shown that the opportunity given to local opposition to discuss freely their concern are generally very limited. A top-down technocratic communication strategy is documented, which dismisses public perception of risk as often unfounded. A third modality of public involvement, more advanced, would be deliberation. In deliberation, the public is involved in the development of the policies through, for example, citizen juries, interactive panel, workshop, etc. This modality is almost never adopted. According to some authors, the problem is that present transition policies are completely within the paradigm of so-called ecological modernization. This approach, that is the dominant approach when we look at transition policies, Green New Deal, etc. This paradigm has a great faith in technological innovation in the market. It wants to solve environmental problems to strategy based on economic growth, such as tax policies, to encourage market demand, or tax exemption for energy saving intervention. In Italy, we have a huge program on tax exemption for retrofitting buildings, or incentives for the production of renewable energy, or real estate policies for enhancement of high energy class home. These policies, it has been shown, are socially and territorially blind policies. They don't take into account social and territorial diversity in such a way that contribute to reproduce social and territorial inequality. In particular, it has been argued that it has been shown that lower class have problem assessing policies based on direct incentive or in the form of tax deduction. There are some studies that analyzed tax deduction for retrofitting in Italy that have shown that this policy favor middle classes, while lower classes don't have assets to this kind of policy tool. On the other, from a territorial point of view, transition policies in many cases have resulted in exploitation of weakest rural areas. For example, the largest PV plant in Italy is on-ground PV system of 72 megawatt in the province of Rovigo, that is in the northeast of Italy, and is owned by an American investment fund, which used Spanish labor to build it and to manage it. So there is a problem with the energy transition, and how the sociological research responded to this problem. First of all, by stressing the need to go from the backyard to the territory. That means to take a more serious view of the where of the energy transition. It is important to seriously consider the spatial dimension of the energy transition. Up to now, in the public expert discourse, two were the dominant view of the where of the energy transition. The first one is the one I talked about before, the one that see places as backyard dominated by NIMBY opposition. The other one see places as sites to be developed, characterized by salient objective characteristic, like, for example, average annual wind speed, proximity to electricity grid, accessibility. Both these visions don't take into consideration the multiple meanings of the territory for individuals and community. However, sociological research stresses that location for renewable sources are not only sites with topographical, ecological, or archaeological feature, but also places with symbolic and emotional element, as well as with structure of relationship. So, there's a need for planning to take a perspective focus on the territory. This perspective no longer should aim to the acceptance of a technology by the population, but should rather identify the way in which the technology can be adapted to the place. This adequacy concerns the degree to which residents believe that the proposed project maintain the specificity of a place and the continuity with the past. This also means to look at relations with, between local actor and local resources. Another way to respond to the problematic aspect of the energy transition is to focus on community renewable energy as a way to grant a more just transition. Community renewable energy indicates a new relationship between society and its energy system. Community renewable energy is a so-called grassroots innovation, an innovation that rather than focusing on technology, it focuses on the development of new form of organization, experimentation of new agreement, the creation of new social institutions. It gives rise to forms of management, production, distribution of energy that diverge from traditional organizational model centered either on the market or on the state. According to some author, community renewable energy include all those projects of production, distribution and consumption of renewable energy, which in varying degree are developed or managed through an open and participatory process, and which produce local and collective benefits. They can take diversified organizational and legal forms. They go from cooperative, owning energy infrastructure, to non-profit entities that manage the plants on behalf of a local community, to co-ownership of projects by community, businesses, and local government. They can involve production, consumption, or distribution. They can be based on community of place or community of interest. Often they have they tend to address a politics of the possible. That means they go beyond electricity generation. They have a series of normative aims, normative goals, such as, first of all, the reduction of energy consumption behavior. This is really important because many policy documents also from the European Commission tackle this issue, the need for a real transition, also to tackle the issue of energy consumption, the reduction of energy consumption. So not only find new way to produce more clean, to produce energy, but also to make consumption more efficient and to reduce energy consumption. Then they aim also at biodiversity protection, and very important, they aim often at the empowerment of disadvantaged group. Indeed, in the literature, a series of socioeconomic and environmental advantages are attributed to community renewable energy, from producing technology that is more consistent with the characteristic of the territory, to strengthening a virtuous relation between the city and the rural, to favor the closure of the energy and material cycle at the local scale, and through the establishment of short supply chains of energy production and consumption. This is also, I think, very important. Other advantages are to foster a sense of social cohesion among the members, to help reduce the physical and psychological detachment of the public from the energy system. The fossil fuel centralized energy system has detached production from consumption, and this has also have an impact on our energy behaviors. Because energy is something that is obscure, very technical, and that cannot be touched, is not visible. But community energy can kind of rebuild this relationship between the production and the consumption side. So can produce a form of social learning, which make obscure socio-technical process the subject of shared reflection. Shared reflection, as a result, can induce a change in energy consumption. and also can address energy poverty issue, which are becoming topical today, especially due to the high cost of energy. This is while until now community energy was a kind of niche development, things are changing because the European Union recently recognized the importance of community renewable energy through the Renewable Energy Directive 2018-2001, which introduced for the first time a definition of community renewable energy. Moreover, European countries are promoting community energy in their COVID recovery plans. For example, in Italy, 2.2 billion euros have been planned for support of energy community in the recovery plan. So now a lot of initiatives are flourishing. So I think this could be a solution out of the for a more just and more sustainable energy transition. I conclude here. Sorry for the late.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I think it's a very interesting presentation, especially because help to demystify some cliche about how the information in societies is effective or not in this case. I have a question about the dichotomy between the transition energy and the reduction in consumption. Sometimes there is some part of the expert that say should not be consumed even more, and passing the investing money in research to improve consumption even more, but eventually reduce drastically our consumption in terms, for example, banning all the cars from the cities. This will come also in help to helping the transition between rural and cities and something like that. From your point of view, which is more effective in terms of passing the information or accepting this type of transition? Is the energy transition in terms of new technology improving the energy production, or the reduction of consumption? Which is the in sociological term, which is the message that pass better or in a more effective way?
Yes, I think it's a difficult question. Reduction of consumption is something, it's not an easy message in our society. Of course, as I said before, there are some authors that stress that we are in a society dominated by ecological modernization paradigm. So the ecological modernization as the mantra of economic growth, and it sees the solution to all environmental problems in more production, more efficient production, okay? That means production helped by technology. But many studies have shown that this assumption has many problems. First of all, there's all the issue of the rebound effect. A technology that reduces the costs can produce an increase in consumption, and our resources are limited. Nowadays, I think it's difficult to communicate this message of consumption reduction, but it depends also on the context in which this communication happens, because as to up to now, many policies that have been developed within the paradigm of ecological modernization has been has had a skeptical reaction by many population groups. Let's think about the Gilets jaunes in France, because of course there is groups of people who don't see the advantages of transition policies under the ecological modernization paradigm. So there are a group of people who are excluded by this kind of approach. So I think this probably today is the best time to promote other way of communicating about energy that can be more communitarian and grassroots based. If you are part of a community, the message of consume less can be legitimized. While if it is the state that make it compulsory, it's not going to be accepted, of course.
I see some similarity with the vaccine acception in society. I think it's very similar approach, or not, in terms of sociological approach. Is similar or not? Communication, yeah. How the communication is I have to improve the communication with the energy transition approach and the vaccine obsession. I think I see a lot of similarity in which
Yes, there are similarities. Also because both of them, both these issues shows that we are in a so-called reflexive modernization phase. Sociologists like Beck or Giddens talked about reflexive society. So we are in a society where you cannot easily impose a solution, a technological solution from the above. Solution need to be collectively shared. There has to be some context where there is sharing of this solution, because nowadays we are not, this is also positive, we are not more in a situation where we accept from what comes from the above, but there is a possibility to get information by ourselves. There is less trust in institutions. So these are problematic aspects that probably play a role in both these fields.
Okay, thank you very much again for the presentation, Natalia. So we now starting the round table. It will be introduced by our president, Davide Accardi. Please, Davide, you have the word.
Thank you. I have actually like a question for each of the speakers. So I will start with Professor Mendes. So I would like to have some clarification about your point of view and the positive feedback that the production of hydrogen will actually create economical feedback and reduction of CO2. So my understanding is from your presentation, basically, so from methane, you are capable to produce carbon and hydrogen, no?
Davide, sorry.
I don't know. So let me see if there is, do you hear me better?
You have some lag in the, try to remove your video feed, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. So So I wanted to have some clarification from Professor Mendes regarding like the positive feedback that like the production of hydrogen will actually create. So in the environmental aspects and the economical aspects. So from my understanding is that you showed us the reaction that you can produce from methane, carbon, and hydrogen. So, and then basically, so the first question that I have is like, isn't methane like also like a not renewable or easily renewable resource? And the second aspect was like economical, and that was related with the possibility of actually like selling or actually buying, from companies that produce CO2 and carbons, like removing like the carbons that they produce to produce hydrogen and gaining money from this. But then how sustainable would be this positive feedback? Given that also those companies would at a certain point actually switch to hydrogen or other renewable sources of energy. So I wanted to have some clarification on this, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Let me say this way. This reaction, methane composition, allows a very fast change on towards the decarbonization of the energy. It's very, very fast because the infrastructure is there. We have the resources, we have everything. For long run, I agree completely with something that Natalia said. We have to learn to use less energy, full stop. Actually, we have to learn how to use less resources, full stop. And this is possible. Organizing the cities, so if you live close where you work, so if it makes possible to rent houses instead of buying houses, and there are lots of work to do that are not high-tech, no high technology. We need also high technology, but we also need low-tech. We need to meet each other. We need to recover this human contact in the framework of a social place. So meet each other. We need that. We need to gain confidence in each other, which in my opinion is the primary source of all these, manifestations. So let me make it clear. Using natural gas, is this just for a transient period of time? Then you can use biogas. And if you do biogas, so what you have is you have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, is incorporated in the biomass. You do the anaerobic fermentation of biomass, you produce biomethane. You do the decomposition of biomethane, you get hydrogen and carbon. And this is precisely mimic the nature. So then you can use this carbon for a civil industry, you can use for energy applications, not for burning, but for the electrodes that are used, for instance, on the electrolyzers. You can use for paving the roads. So there are lots of applications for this carbon. But what is the beauty of this reaction? It is that it can allow us to move very quickly from a fossil carbon-based economy for the very quick decarbonization using the present infrastructure. That's the key point. But we have to spend. This is an oxygen balloon for changing completely everything. We need to spend 10 times less wherever we are consuming now. Otherwise, it won't be possible to continue, in this planet.
Thank you very much, because I now I really understand so where the point is of this. So thank you very much. Very clear explanation, and it was not clear before to me. But maybe it was my problem, and now it's really clear.
Sorry.
Thank you. And instead, the question that I have for Professor Magnani is, it might sound as a actually kind of provocation, but it's not. It's a serious issue that I take into consideration very often. So in a democratic context, so our freedom is limited by the freedom of the others. So we can do whatever we want until we don't invade the freedom or limit the freedom of the next person, the person that is in front of us. Okay, so, and then you discuss also justice in several aspects. So, and then I'm considering about generational justice and how much we will actually limit the freedom of the next generations if we don't switch to alternative sources of energies, or we don't change our actions, so the current behavior, right? So then my question is, how long would it take, or how long are we away from basically making like this transition or like the lack of the transition as a crime? Because at a certain point, it is, I mean, it should be already seen as a crime, like polluting and continuing in the direction of consumption that we are actually like walking in this moment. But then, of course, at a certain point, there will be the need to actually like legiferate and limit this kind of behavior. So how far away are we from like a strong limiting legislation in this direction?
Yes, I think, of course, as you may know, if we look at, for example, the result of international event such as COP26, of course, we are not going in a direction of adopting very radical policies on climate change, on the energy transition. The energy transition is a kind of a patchy thing, something that is, there are some areas that are more advanced. The EU is now promoting community energy, but at the same time, we still continue supporting fossil sources. So is the so-called incumbent actors are well present in our system, and they also want to take their piece of the cake of the energy transition. So we have companies that are fossil fuels but push green energy. So it's something complicated. It's not. Yeah, the new thing is that the intergenerational conflict is a conflict where one of the two sides is not completely present, let's say, because but I think it has become more evident in these days when the movement of Greta Thunberg, all this the young people movement have developed. I think it's something very very new and very interesting. But of course, it's not enough to transform this patchy situation, this patchy way of transitioning. So I'm not so optimistic, I would say. Yes, we will see. Of course, there are also some progress in the way we deal with these issues, because I think it's the first time that from the conference, for example, it emerged the idea of stopping carbon, the use of carbon. And also I think Portugal is one of the countries who stopped the carbon industries as a
Oh, yes. We stopped.
So, I mean, there are some optimist, some lights, some something that makes us hopeful. But the situation is fragmented, is contradictory, is full of contradiction. Yes, so I don't know.
Thank you very much. Andrea?
Yes, I have a question, Professor Mendes, about, actually there are two questions. One, it's about your main expertise, that are solar cells, that we are reached a limit for the conversion of electricity, or we have more to discover in terms of, conversion of electricity from light. The other is related to this in terms of which is the state in this moment about the batteries. So the way in which we can put energy and use this energy in shifted in time. That will be a revolution. In this moment is not an option. Use battery for solar energy or for wind energy. We have to use other type. We can transform it in hydrogen, or we can pump water or something like that. But in terms of batteries, will be from your point of view, that is on the field, which is the perspective for the future.
Thank you for the questions. So concerning photovoltaics, most probably next year it will be available already in the market. Photovoltaic cells at a very reasonable price with 30% of power conversion efficiency. It means that 30% of the sun irradiation will be transformed in electricity, and this is absolutely critical. Mainly for cities where you have a limited area for harvesting the sun radiation and transforming it in hydrogen, in electricity. So this will be available, and I guess quite soon it will be as cheap as it is now, and the conventional technology based on silicon. Speaking about batteries or storage, energy storage systems, this is the hot topic for research right now. Everyone is speaking about lithium, and lithium is a complicated type of battery, in my opinion, because it's not sustainable in terms of environment. Research is now going on sodium batteries, which are far more sustainable because you can obtain sodium from the seawater. And obviously, they are not using just sodium, but as a whole, sodium batteries are much better in terms of safety, power density, price, environmental sustainability, but they store less energy. That's the challenge. But there are so many different technologies now running in laboratories that some of them, they promise liquid batteries with up to 1 kilowatt hour per liter of energy, which is 10% of gasoline can store, and far more, 3 times more than the present lithium batteries. Lithium-based batteries, lithium sulfur batteries with more than 1 kilowatt hour of power per liter. So the technology is evolving very fast, still some challenges to overcome, but by the end of this decade, I'm expecting that storage will be far easier and will be not solved, but far easier. So for hydrogen, people speak about hydrogen as an energy vector. It is an energy vector, but not a good one. And I may favor to look at what nature after 4,500 million years invented. And nature uses carbon dioxide as a vehicle for the energy. And I think we should pay more attention to that. I'm not saying that we have to copy-paste what nature did, but we have to pay more attention and get more inspiration on what nature is doing, because nature equilibrates everything. And so we have to look a little bit deeper. Hydrogen is just a transient solution. It's not very convenient. If you put 100 units of energy in to produce hydrogen, so you have electricity, you produce hydrogen, and then you use hydrogen to get electricity, you put 100, you get 35. That's terrible, but it is the only solution we have for right now for some challenges. It's the only one. If you put in a lithium battery, if you put 100 units of electricity, it's going back, you store it as a chemical, substance, and then goes back to electricity, 90 units of energy. So the efficiency is far, far better. And all the processes that nature invented are quite similar to the ones of the batteries. It's crazy. It's like that. We have to learn how to do an artificial photosynthesis. It's something that should be done. And there are lots of research on that. And soon I'm expecting that the chemical processes are mimicking each time more than nature. But again, spending less, it's much better than anything that we are going to invent. We need to invent, we need to develop, but I'm fully agree with Natalia. We have to spend less.
I think this is a very important. So 2 points is spending less and biomimic the nature. This is the two key words of the day. So thank you, Professor Mendes, for the kind answer. I have just a question for Natalia from Giovanni. How to convince developing society to develop a green way? After all, the West are polluted for 150 years and reaped the benefits.
Wow, it's a big question.
Big question.
It's a big question. Yeah, I think now is the right moment, actually. As said before, the rising cost of energy, of gas in particular, is touching us directly, no? And as I see, for example, many people now start to think about this and start to think, okay, maybe I could, what can I do? Maybe I can change my provider, the utility, the energy utility. So why don't look at a cooperative kind of utility, no? This is the moment in which the so-called niche, there are some sociologists that study socio-technical innovation, and they say that innovation usually developed in a niche, and then this niche can upscale when there are particular changes in the so-called landscape, when the landscape open a window of opportunity, the niche can upscale and have an impact on the so-called regime. I think this could be one of those moments, because the rising cost of energy create opportunity for innovative approaches to energy, like a community-based approaches, cooperative kind of approaches. And people may start to think about their habits, their behavior. So there can be this kind of break in the wall, in the regime, and it can open up opportunities, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I have a million questions for today. It's very interesting, but the time is finished for us. So I want to leave with a last question for both. It's just the EU is investing resources in climate action energy. The next investment for the research of the EU is about 30% of the budget, will be at least. So it's a very important topic also for European Union. A lot of money will come for research in this subject. So it's too much ambitious, 2050 for carbon neutrality, or we can get better. What do you think?
Natalia, you want to go first?
No, go. I think it's a more scientific kind of question.
I think it's political, sociological, and technological. I think it's all of this all together, because...
Yeah, yes, of course. I think there has to be a general consensus at the political level, first of all, no? And I'm not sure that, I don't think we have this. Probably now is better than a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm thinking about the US presidency. And of course, Biden is more sensitive to this issue, but not so much, because I heard that he renovated the subsidies to fossil fuel companies, as many other countries are doing. So if there is no strong political consensus of the big of the world, I think things are too difficult to change. Then if we could have this consensus, and also at the bottom, at the grassroots level, some niche that develop, we could have a change in the so-called regime, and so probably reach this goal.
Okay. Professor Mendes?
Thank you. I'm not afraid that this revolution is going to stop. And my reason is very simple. It's profitable to change for cleaner. It's the only reason. Concerning putting money on that, obviously money is necessary. It's absolutely critical. But putting lots of money, for developing things, it's not only money that is necessary. And sometimes if the money is not directly, it is not properly used, it's just wasting money.
We are Italian, we know that.
So I'm really very afraid when politicians, for communicating easily, it's like fast food, they say, I'm going to put 1 million euros wherever. It's not enough. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's completely different. Sometimes it's necessary much less than that. So I prefer to focus on unanimous opinions that something is necessary to do. And convince Greta Thunberg that Fridays for the climate is not enough. It's just very little. We have to make Fridays for the climate working hard for changing in labs, thinking, strategy, and things like that. So I propose Fridays for hard work for the environment and not just, protesting.
Thank you very much, Professor Mendes, for these wise words. And I want to thank you both for participating today. It was very interesting, elucidating, I think, for all of us. So I hope for a next time having another opportunity to having you here for such type of discussions, so constructive discussions. I want to just leave the table now to our president, Davide Accardi, for closing words. And thank you again, all of you.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Okay, thank you very much to all our speakers and Andrea and Giovanni for the support. It was really enlightening. So thank you for this really detailed explanation in all your fields, and then the enriching discussion. I hope you will be with us again with more positive and even like advanced news in all fields. So thanks, and for all the people that are following us, again, if you want to know about Hipácia, go to our webpage, www.hipácia.pt. Thank you all, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye to all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.